Well, thank you so very much. And Bill, thank you once again for the kind invitation to have me join so many people whom I respect and admire. I thought this was sort of a ladies' night for me, and I want to do something different. And Michael, if you're ready to roll, I've got a very short film I thought you might find interesting.
And we're back with more Magic in the Air. Steve Wolf will roar through here soon in Samson. Patty Whitesap, the nation's top aerobatic pilot, is preparing to fly. But our next performer is the one that all air show performers stand in awe of. He is the legendary Bob Hoover. We'll meet him momentarily. But first, Bob is preparing to take a 20,000-pound jet and put it through maneuvers that the manufacturer said couldn't be done.
Okay, coming in now. We're going after that 16-point roll. It should be toward us. It goes coming up. First one, rather quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to be converted. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, one more, 3, 5, and 16. All right, that's 16-point roll. Then the T-35. Big chunk of sky one with them. Over the top very, very gracefully. Every time you see the nose coming up just slightly, that means he's going to roll T-39 on the Sabre liner. In the right seat, having fun as he does every Sunday afternoon with Bob, our co-pilot, John Giburi. He's going to touchdown the Sabre liner. For those of you who have flown the T-39, what a wonderful kitty car airplane to fly. Okay, you pilots have done touch and go, stop and go. This we call the touch and zoom.
Prepares to switch from the Sabreliner to the Shrike Aero Commander. Let's find out more about this man they call the pilot's pilot. In the shadow of Los Angeles International, one of the world's busiest airports, lives one of the biggest legends in aviation, R.A. Bob Hoover. It has been said more people have seen this man perform than any other aviator in history. Inspired by the great aviators of his day, Turner, Doolittle, and Lindbergh, Bob Hoover determined at an early age to earn his wings.
I worked in a grocery store 16 hours on Saturday, and I ride a bicycle to the airport on Sunday, and fly away the $2 I earned on Saturday for 15 minutes flying time.
But the first few times he went flying, young Hoover made himself sick.
Oh, indeed. Every time I get in the airplane, I get sick. And I started doing aerobatics to overcome that because I wanted to fly so much that I just didn't want anything to stand in the way.
Overcoming nausea and cash flow problems, by age 16, Bob Hoover earned the wings with which he would one day fly into the Aviation Hall of Fame, joining such aviation luminaries as the Wright brothers and Charles Lindbergh. It was during World War II, at the tender age of 21, Hoover began his career as a test pilot, flying reassembled aircraft out of Casablanca, North Africa. From there, Hoover flew 58 combat missions aboard the Spitfire before being shot down in the south of France. He spent 16 months in a German POW camp. When the war ended, Hoover had no trouble finding work as a test pilot. It was the dawn of the jet age. A time during which Hoover narrowly escaped death on several occasions. He broke his back, broke his jaw, his nose, and both legs. Hoover has 5 parachute jumps to his name, all 5 because he had to. With the wealth of experience as a test pilot, this lanky 6'1" native of Nashville has become one of the most sought-after airshow performers in the world.
Those of us
in the aviation community feel that he has a God-given talent that none of us will ever get. And Bob's true love, of course, as you know, is flying.
The other love in Bob Hoover's life is Colleen, his wife of 42 years. They have one son, one daughter, and one grandchild.
Of course, his chalky area down here.
In his poolside den, Hoover has accumulated the mementos of a half-century spent flying. Here hang the medals this nation has accorded him, among them the Distinguished Flying Cross. There are airplane models he has built and photographs on every wall. Central to it all, the Hoover Bar, where he and friends touch down on occasion. Besides an engaging smile and handlebar mustache, the Hoover trademark is a plantation-style straw hat, actually worn to protect a sensitive skin. To those who know him, though, it is Hoover's humility that sets him apart. Despite having flown nearly every make and model plane requiring a pilot, Bob Hoover is never a cocky pilot in the cockpit.
I can do it truthfully tell you that every time I get in an airplane for an air show demonstration, I say to myself, don't do anything dumb.
For the past 26 years, Bob Hoover has been the official starter and pace plane at the Reno Air Races.
And you heard those famous words, gentlemen, you have a race.
But at Reno and thousands of air shows at home and abroad, it is Hoover's performance in a Shrike Aero Commander and a Sabre liner that crowds clamor to see.
If you watch him for the first time, you may not realize that Bob will be flying the aircraft with both engines operating, one engine operating, and no engines operating.
The challenge is to see how light a load you can put on the airplane and yet make it perform. It's a constant challenge, and you're having to say to yourself, easy does it, easy does it, easy does it. And that's just going through my mind constantly when I'm flying the airplane, because one abrupt move and the airplanes would come apart.
Hoover attempts never to exceed more than 2.5 Gs while flying the Shrike and Sabre liner. Both planes are designed to haul executives in three-piece business suits, not to perform death-defying aerobatics. Sponsored for years by Rockwell International, Hoover flies today for Evergreen Aviation International, based in McMinnville, Oregon. Bob Hoover is now 68, past the age when most men retire.
I've got on several occasions that they go to it. We were fantastic. And I can think of so many things that I have put off that I've never gotten around to doing because I haven't had the time. One, I think I really go after the tennis. I really like and enjoy playing tennis. And I'm not very good at it at all.
And Hoover says he'd play golf, and he'd probably buy a boat. But this man, described by many simply as the pilot's pilot, remains healthy and happy to be flying. Does he ever take a vacation? I'm on vacation all the time, says Hoover. I love flying. Flying is my life.
Thank you. You know, I really thought I died and gone to heaven. I was told by North American Rockwell that when I turned 60, I had to quit flying. And that really got to me like you can't imagine. And so I decided, how can I overcome this? And I talked with the chief legal counsel, the president, chairman of the board of the company, and I said, why can't I fly? Well, we can't let you fly because the airlines pilots have to quit at 60, and we don't want any age discrimination lawsuits filed against us if we let you fly, and we can't let the other pilots fly that long. And we think you'd be all right, but that's just the way it is. And I said to the chief legal counsel, what if I buy the airplanes and I own them instead of the company? And he said, well, I guess we wouldn't have any control over it. And I said, okay. And I went to the bank, borrowed the money, and I started buying airplanes. And I bought the B-51 first. And I was very disappointed paid $36,000 when I bought it for North American. And they wanted to charge me something like $500,000, not that I went for $100,000, but I like this particular airplane. I've been in it flying it for so long. So I really want this airplane. So I ended up paying an awful lot more for it just because it was my airplane. I considered my own. Nobody else ever could. And then I bought a T-28, which I made the first flight on and demonstrated worldwide. And I bought the Shrike, of course. And what was the other one I got? I just said one of the Shrike. Mustang, of course. And the T-28. But it was a real privilege to have them. And what a delight to have that Sabre on it. When I bought that thing, instead of spending 10 or 12 hours going back and forth across the country because of all the many landings you had to make before you do it, I finally winged it and held her at it. Still own it, as a matter of fact, 520 miles an hour from coast to coast. And I was profiled at 4 hours and 20 minutes, but I didn't get the wind so long as I anticipated. But nevertheless, flying that Sabre was the biggest dream ever. Of course, everybody said you can't do that sort of thing with it. Well, I did just about anything I wanted to do with it. The only difference is with this kind of flying, you had to be so delicate on the flight controls, just very sensitive. And I jokingly say it's somewhat like milking a mouse. Don't make any abrupt movements. The structure of the airplane will not take you. The routine I did with the Sabreliner was one that I had performed with the P-38. I went around to the bases in North Africa where they were flying P-38s, and I did engine off loops and rolls into the dead engine. But it was a 7433G. And when North American and Rockwell merged, the Rockwell company were building the commanders, and they said, hey, you got to do something to help us sell these airplanes. And so I went down and took a look at it, and I was convinced that it was a well-built airplane, but I wasn't convinced that they had tested it to its fullest extent. So rather than take a chance on busting my buttons in front of a lot of people, I went out and worked with it for a while. So what I had to do was adjust my thinking. Don't pull, just gently ease the controls in for a loop or whatever move I wanted to do. And everything was limited to 4 Gs. And for you ladies, if you weigh 100 pounds and you pull 4 Gs, you weigh 400 pounds. And if you pull 7 Gs, like the fighters are designed for it now, they're even more, they do weigh 700 pounds or 900 pounds for 90. So you can see those are the kind of stresses that are exerted on an airplane, so you therefore have to be terribly cautious. And one of the early shows I did with it was down in Weathers, Oklahoma. And it was one of the astronauts' hometown, and they were renaming the airport. He called and asked me if I would come down and put on a demonstration for the event, the occasion of renaming the airport. Well, I got down there and I did a loop that was just right on the money. It was so round that I hit my own prop wash when I came out. And I was holding about 3 Gs and it went to 4. Well, limit's just 4 to 4.4. So I said, uh-oh, you got to do better than that. You better knock off less Gs. So this really called for some ticklish flying to get the airplane to do what I wanted to do in order to accomplish these maneuvers. And I finally worked it down to where it was 2.5 Gs. And you could fly with me through these maneuvers. And you wouldn't even know when you were upside down because I would do it on a parabolic. And it's about like riding an elevator. But I could pour iced tea upside down. And I thought we were going to show that on the other film, but it isn't. I'm sorry, I thought it was on the film. My How about this? Let's go to the next slide. Well, I've shown this to the other audiences, but this is the X-1, which was the first airplane to go faster than sound, and Chuck Yeager was flying it. And I took this photograph at 42,000 feet, and it was the first time that an airplane had ever gone faster than sound. And the first time we ever got those diamond shock waves trailing the airplane. Next slide. Well, most of the pilots have already seen this, and my joking comment is if you stick your hands in the fire often enough, you could get them burned. You can see how fast I can run. And that was the last time I wore this suit for my flight demonstration flights. Next slide. Well, then I had a chance to see this today. This was the end result of a spin that I could not recover. And nothing I did would work. And when I ran out of courage and know-how and altitude, I decided it's time to get out. And so I did. But oddly enough, when I got out, there was no wind blowing in the cockpit because it was a flat spin. And you couldn't believe how calm it was. All the air was upwards, and I got out safely. We did more spin tests and lost another airplane. And I eventually was able to recover from a lot of flat spins by using the afterburner. And that generally worked. But you know, an aside, it just hit me for a moment here. I had done spins with that Strike Commander for 25, maybe 30 years. And I did 5-turn spins consistently every event. And I would say there were thousands of them. And never a problem. Most predictable thing in the world. But I said that about the F-86, and I found out I was dead wrong on that. But it turns out that the same went flat on me down in Fort Worth, Texas. And I thought, wow, I've never seen that in this kind of an airplane. And I put one engine on for power, and the other one without, trying to stop the rotation with power. And that didn't work. And I was having to stiff arm and take both hands to get the yoke forward because the forces were so high. And when you're in a flat spin, you're actually going backwards about a point that's several hundred feet in front of you. And as you're going backwards and falling straight down here, elevators are forced up on an airplane that has direct controls like the Commander did have, or the P-38. And I did that with the P-38 for a lot of years. But I stiff-armed it. That didn't work, and let go of the controls, took both throttles forward to idle, and then got the yoke forward with both hands and hit the throttles full power, and the nose dropped. And I bet you I dropped from 10,000 feet down to about 1,000 feet with no opportunity to get out of the airplane or survive. But I never did another spin. And it's an amazing thing if you think about it, to do 1,000 maneuvers that are exactly the same. Nothing changed. And yet, one day it didn't work. And it was the last time I did it. Next time. I thought y'all might enjoy this picture. I was a president of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots on 2 occasions, and this was in 1969. And by that time, Lindbergh and I had very good friends. I met him when I was demonstrating an airplane over in Germany. And he came up when I finished flying, and a lot of people were standing around wanting pictures and autographs. And this elderly gentleman, probably 20 years older, and he said, I'd like to talk to you privately. And I thought, well, I'll be nice to him. So I said, sir, would you keep all of these people that are waiting in line to talk to them here, shake hands or whatever. And I said, and as soon as I can excuse myself, I'll come over and visit with you. And so I did, and he said, I'm interested in learning and getting up to date on everything. And I said, well, I'm pleased to hear that you are. And he said, my name is Lindbergh. And I looked at him, and I thought, not Charles Lindbergh, can't be. It was. And he told me that he had lived for all these 20 or 30 years under the name of Schwartz. And he lived in Germany and France, and I found out after he was dead, he had families over there as well as his family here. That's something I never knew about. By the time he passed away, I'd known him for quite a long time. And he asked me, he said, I'm a member of the board of directors under the name of Schwartz with Pan American Airlines. And he said, did you come over on Pan Am? And I said, yes, sir, I certainly did. He said, well, I'll go back on the same flight you on. Let me make the reservations and we'll sit together. He said, there's a lot of things I'd like to talk to you about. And so I said, well, I'd be privileged and honored. Who wouldn't feel that way with Charles Lindbergh? So we got on the airplane, and those days it was old Stratford and Stratford. It was about a 9-hour flight across the Atlantic. We sat there, we sat acquainted, and he told me a lot about himself, and he told me how much he was interested in the Rocky career and the work he'd done with Dr. Goddard, back in the 30s. And he wanted to know what we were doing at Rockwell. Of course, Rocky died in the division of Rockwell with others, the Rocky Motors that had taken out our pilots to the moon, astronauts to the moon, and would help the Apollo capsules. So I was up to date on everything, and friends of all of the original 7 astronauts, and many others later on, but he would come out, and when I returned this trip, I went in to see Dutch Gilbert and Lee Atwood, who was the president and chairman of the company and the founders, and I told him of my experience with Lindbergh, and I said he advised me that he does have a top secret clearance, and he would really like to have me get him exposed to all of the research and development that we were working on. And North America, even before they merged with Rockwell, were very diversified. We were involved in everything, Atomics International, and there's some navigation systems for the nuclear submarines that went under Valley Smoke, and the North Pole. Anyway, he would come out about first it was about every month or two, and then it started slipping, but I never saw a man soak up so much knowledge. It was like a sponge. And I'd have these PhDs, technical people, giving briefings, and I look back on it. Wouldn't those engineers and people who preach him like to have known that he was the man they were addressing? Because the way I felt about it, I thought, boy, I'm looking at a man that's in heaven, he's about the most important aviator in the world, but it's an inspiration. Every one of us, when we were young, thought about what Lindbergh had accomplished. Well, I got to know him fairly well, and he told me all kinds of stories. And I asked him one day, because I had flown the Spirit of St. Louis replica that they made for the film. And you talk about squirrely, I never flew a more unstable airplane in my life. Just like this all the time. And I said, why in the world did he get some stability in that airplane? He said, I didn't want it. How could I stay away? I got the right idea that I had to be responsible for the symposium that's held every year for the society. And there were about 1,800 members in that organization, and we held an annual symposium at the Beverly Hills Hotel in Beverly Hills. And him about the society, and I alluded to the fact that we would like to make him an honorary member. And he said, I don't want to come out of his guilty. He said, and he started to question me on it. And Wallace Shurah, one of the original 7 astronauts, was a board member of the Society of Experimental Astronauts. And he said, I'm going to write him a letter. And he wrote him a letter and then showed me the letter. And I cringed because it was a very blunt letter. He said, every one of these people in our organization have all risked their buttons. And he said, they are people that would admire you and respect you, but you cannot get the award unless you appear in person. And then he started talking to me, called me to talk about it. And he said, could you hide me? Could you bring me in the back door and introduce me? And then I could run back out the back door and have me driven wherever you want me to go. And so I told him, I said, look. And he didn't want any pictures. He didn't want any autographs. He just didn't want to be recognized. And so this went back and forth for some length of time. And I finally got the idea. I'll call up Deke Slayton. And Apollo 11 crew were on the moon. And I said, Deke, I would like to have the Apollo 11 crew come here and present them with an honor. And I bet if you do that, I can get Lindbergh to say, yes, he'll come out of obscurity. Well, it worked. But Deke said, oh, what kind of a friend are you? You punch your friendship tickets. I said, Dick, this would be the greatest thing that ever happened to the aviation community or the aerospace world to have these two people, two groups of people here that have done so much to advance things. I think he started to, well, they were in quarantine. And you asking me to bring them out the day they get back, and the day they get out of quarantine after they got back. And he said, well, I can't do that. And I said, you can accomplish anything you want right now. These are the world's greatest heroes, and they're American heroes. And you can pack up the wives in one of the Air Force airplanes, and if you need permission, I'll figure out how to get it for you. I'll bring your families out here with them. And so he just kept shaking his head. He finally called me and he said, all right, you win. And so they all came out, and I was at the presidential suite in the Beverly Hills Hotel. And I had a private reception before the program started. And when he walked through the front door, and I had told him, you come through that front door and you're just another person wearing a black tie, a formal thing. And I said, nobody will ever know you. I said, I didn't know who you were when I first introduced yourself to me. When he walked in, nobody knew who he was. He said, where are you taking me? I said, I'll take you up to my suite. I said, I've got some personal friends and some very important people that I'm sure you would like to meet. And I know everybody would like to meet you. And he said, I don't want to go anywhere. He said, I want to read my speech to you. It was a speech on conservatism. And I had actually a little room and opened into the suite. And I listened to the most boring speech you've ever heard in your life. I kept nodding, oh yes, oh that's fine. Well, we walked in, everybody from the gathering I had in Woodtown, and we sat at the front tables there, and the crew. And on this slide here, that's Lindbergh on one side and Neil Armstrong on the other side of my wife, Dolly. And I was sitting next to Neil there. But this picture showed up on the front pages of papers all over the world. Associated Press were there. And it just flashed out like that. It got NASA the best publicity they've ever had. And it helped the Society of Experimental Test Pilots too, because people started to say, what is their organization? It's been an organization that's saved a lot of lives because of the exchange of information among people who are in that profession. Well, got down and they were sitting like this. Colleen was sitting in there, and then we leaned across and said to Neil, "You're going to regret signing your autograph like this." And Neil said back across in front of Colleen, "These are my friends, and they've all taken the same risk I've taken. And if they want my autograph or my picture, they will get it." And they said, "No one recognized Lindbergh." And so when I finally said, "I have a little surprise for you," and I brought him up on stage, pandemonium took place. I mean, you couldn't stop the applause. It was a standing ovation. It just went on and on. It disrupted the whole evening. I didn't think we were going to be able to get the rest of the program together. And people started coming up to the stage. And I told him, I said, "Look, if you're going to break down and sign your name or whatever, shake hands, let me know. We got to have some order and you didn't get the program going." And so he finally agreed to that. And before the evening was out, he was signing autographs, shaking hands with people. And he wrote me a letter from Hong Kong afterwards. And he said, "I have arrived in Hong Kong and they had canceled my reservation. And I couldn't find any place to stay." And he said, "Some very nice lady asked me if I wanted to stay at her place. And he said, I've got the door locked because I think I might be in a house of ill repute." And that's where he was writing this letter. Years later, I received the Lindbergh Award for sewing. And the letter is very interesting. For those of you who bought the book, I think it's in there. But while it's alive, I invited him to come with me because he was just trying to get Lindbergh in. He helped me out a lot. And to the symposium. I asked Mrs. Lindbergh if she was there with her daughter, and Mara was. And I had him read the letter, and I said, "Would you mind if I had Wally read this letter, because it was all about me and I didn't want to read it, but I thought everybody would get a kick out of what I've just said about it." And Wally read the letter, and it really brought the house down. It was a wonderful night, but it was a great experience in my life to get to meet him. He'd been in our home and sat there at the bar with me half of the night. He was a teetotaler, but you'd never know it. He acted like he was just enjoying himself as much as you were. And he had some peculiar habits. Because of his height, he would stand and be talking to someone shorter, and he'd keep towards things. I thought it was sort of breaking down on face contact. But anyway, those were interesting experiences. Let's go to the next one. That's another picture of Lindbergh when I presented with the award. Okay. Well, I put this picture on here. These are sergeant pilots with me. And the gentleman on the right is Harold Shelby, and I imagine everybody's heard of the Shelby Ford race cars. He built right here in Las Vegas, 10,000 of them last year, and had them all sold before he built them. But he's a great fellow, and he's lived longer than any other human being with a complete heart transplant. And he's still pretty healthy, but he has no immune system. But he's had that heart now for umpteen years. And he was 70 years of age when he got the transplant. And I asked him after he was back on his feet, I said, "What's it like to have a 30-year 70-year-old heart and a 70-year-old body. And he said, it didn't change any of the things you're thinking about. We were all sergeant pilots, and Carol and I were in the same class of flight training, and so many of them were successful. Let's go to the next slide. I can't see from here. Well, that's Jack Daly on the right, and this famous guy on TV for years. David Hartman. David Hartman, please excuse me. What a nice gentleman. He's just volunteered his time to a lot of organizations like yours, and speaks without any charge. It's pretty wonderful. One more. Next slide, please. I can't see it well enough to tell you who's there. Let's just go to the next one. The screen's too far away from me. Well, that's just sort of a trademark. Everybody thinks, how many times did you drag the wings here? I never did, but I'll tell you, I did with the F-86 on several occasions. And Woodley Wilson, who was head of Air Guard when he first got F-86s, he said, well, what are you trying to do, keep North American in business by building wing tips? I never dragged it on the Mustang either. This is one worth sharing with you. When we arrived in Palermo with the second fighting group, we were flying Spitfires, and there were 3 of these Italian airplanes that the places had bombed pretty seriously. But out of 3 airplanes, I got the enlisted men to help me build this into what we call a mail plane. It was a single-seater. And interestingly enough, if you pull the throttle left, that was the same as what we do when we push the throttle forward. If you think that isn't confusing. Well, we're using it because the squadrons are located in different locations, so it wouldn't be a target that might get held out, that wiped out if we had an air raid or bombing raid on us. And we use this as a mail plane. I had open up the front end there and in front of the cockpit, and we put it in there so we could haul the mail and just get it more quickly because the terrain was pretty rough. We were driving the truck, and it worked. We used it, and I checked out several other people in the airplane. And suddenly one day, Margaret McNichol, who was a group commander, he said, we got some orders, and they're going to invade in southern France. And this was a big invasion out of the Cape, and then they said, we're going to take over Sardinia, and of course, there were 2 islands in the Mediterranean, and he said, what are we going to do with the old airplane you got there? And I said, we're going to be scattered again. Wherever we go, the 3 squadrons are going to be in separate locations. So, why don't we fly it over? And he said, who in the world will do it? Oh, dummy me. I said, I'll do it. Well, I put an extra fuel tank in there, had a big one made up, put it up there in front of the cockpit there, and had somebody else bring my other stuff or transport, and off I went. And the plan was, I had no navigation equipment. I was supposed to go to the water for 7 hours. And I thought, well, I could end up in all enemy territory. If I go to the left, I'm going to be into France, and that's occupied by the Germans. If I go to the right, because of wind drift, you don't know what the wind doing to you when you open water all the time, I would end up in Italy, and that was enemy. So he came up, my commanding officer came up with the idea of we'll go and I'll spread the whole fighter group out flying abreast. And then when you see us come overhead, even if you're way off course, you'll still know the right direction to go whenever we pass over. And I know that's a good idea. I never saw any airplane. The orders got changed, and we weren't ready to invade yet. And so I landed in Sardinia, and I thought, well, I'm getting pretty low on fuel. I better land at the nearest airfield I can find. And I landed in one, and it was occupied, had Italian fighters all over the place, monkeys. And this senior person came up to me in a staff car, and he said, come on in. And he said, I'm ready to surrender. And I said, I can't accept your surrender. I said, I'm on my way to Corsica. He said, well, when will somebody come and let us surrender? I don't know, but I said, can you give me something to eat? And I got a little gas from my airplane to get over to Corsica. Well, I got to Corsica, and they hadn't landed there either. So I'm sitting up there with the Italians, and the French, rather. The French came in a little bit late, I guess, but a lot of Italians there. And I was watching people eat really slop. What you and I would throw away in a mess kit, they were catching in their hands so that they could eat something. They were starving to death. And little did I realize that I'd be in the same boat within a matter of a couple of 3 months. And when I got captured, that's the one thing about being a prisoner, nothing like what this dear friend has gone through. But getting hungry is never any fun. But no one in the world ever went through what you folks went through. We're all so proud of you. And I even hesitate to even talk about any time of any of my prison experiences when I think about sleeping on concrete for 5 years, having your feet in stocks. Isn't he the greatest hero we've ever seen? Amen. Let's give him a applause. If any one of us had somebody to look up to, it couldn't be anyone any better than this gentleman. But anyway, they showed up a few days later, and all was well, and for 2 or 3 months, things went along smoothly, and typical combat work, and a lot of fun, until that one bad day when I wasn't where I should have been, and I wish the external fuel tank would have jettisoned, and I might have had a better chance. But anyway, that was the end of that story. Do we have any more slides, Mike? No, that's it. That's it. Thank you so much. For everybody and the future people in aviation. Thank you.
Extemporaneous. I was just going to give you your plaque or your hat or whatever, gosh knows you got. But I have to comment about, I didn't know you were the first test pilot on the P-28. And my father, who was a naval aviator early on, 1720, test pilot, race pilot, all of that, told me, because I went out to the Air Force, he said the best combination is a Pratt Whitney engine and a Hamilton constant speed prop. And And when I looked over the cowl over that right engine and saw that big aeroponics prop, it was the only damn airplane I ever flew that quit on me. Never gave an indication. It is an absolute great honor to have you here tonight. And gosh knows you've got more hats and plaques than you could possibly ever want. But I will say this, we would be terribly honored if you would find a place on your wall for this plaque. And let me read it to you because it goes back to Ron Catton and an article he wrote in the intake about what you told him that probably saved his butt in a recovery from a very close encounter with the ground. From the hunt drivers of the Super Sabre Society, first class or not at all, an appreciation of Bob Hoover, master of the angle of attack. When Bob Hoover talks, hunt drivers listen. Presented April 14, 2001. Bob.